Please the court, Your Honor, this occurred on May 10th of this year here in York County at the Sandbar Restaurant in Rock Hill. There's a restaurant bar. Mr. Odell Fields, who was a regular customer there, had gone there that night, and the police received a call just before 10 o'clock that evening. There was an altercation at the Sandbar. When they arrived, they found Mr. Odell Fields in the parking lot. He had been assaulted. He was unconscious and being treated by EMS personnel. He never gained consciousness. He only died the next day when they took him off of life support. He died as a result of a blow to the head. The autopsy, as Dr. Thomas had referred to, relayed to me, showed that he had a devastating head injury from the actual punch itself, and then ultimately also from him striking his head on the pavement after he was struck. As they began to investigate, they found out that Eric Cobb was the person who had struck him, and that he had left and gone walking down Celanese towards Walmart. The police immediately went that way and found him, and found him with a friend, Greg Wallace. When they started to talk with each of them, both of them said, "I have nothing to do with the fight," before even being questioned about the fight. But then, as they began to give a story and talk more to the police, the story that basically the defendant gave was that the victim had been bothering them all night, that he had been cussing at them and basically egging them on to fight, and that he had been trying to stop his friend Greg from being involved in a fight, that he was just in the middle of trying to...
You use pronouns, man.
That's right. Mr. Cobb was saying that he himself was in just the middle of it, trying to break up Mr. Cobb, or Mr. Odell Fields and his friend, Mr. Wallace. However, he said that during that period of time, at some point he claimed that the victim had thrown a beer at him and then ultimately spit on him, and that's when he hit the victim, and that this is the injury that ultimately resulted, and that he didn't mean for it to be that bad of an injury. Really was just trying to push him back. Mr. Cobb said was just trying to push him back to stop him and separate it. However, as the police continued the investigation, that's not what the witnesses who saw what happened at the bar said happened, and they ultimately had found a video that the bar actually had. The video itself shows that there was really no altercation or argument between this defendant and the victim, Mr. Fields. That Mr. Fields seemed to be very well behaved during the time that he was there. He was there just a brief time. He showed up at about 9:30 when he was brought there by a cab. He was, as I said, a regular there. There was a number of people there. The defendant had gone there with two of his friends, Greg Wallace and Doug Farrell. And it's true that Mr. Wallace at some point does start saying things to Mr. Fields, but it appears that Mr. Wallace is the one trying to be aggressive. Mr. Fields, I want to point out to the court, was in no way appearing to be aggressive to anyone that night. As a matter of fact, at some point the people at the bar just asked Mr. Fields to just prevent what Mr. Wallace was attempting, if he would just be willing to go, which he did. He went outside on the sidewalk, was waiting for a cab to come pick him up. Was actually standing there with the manager and bouncer so that nothing would happen, and actually he did have a beer in his hand, Mr. Fields did. He poured that out on the pavement. It was not thrown at anyone. He then took the cup and threw it in the trash can and actually started walking across the parking lot to leave. Unfortunately, at that time, Mr. Cobb's friend, Mr. Wallace, started pursuing him across the parking lot as Mr. Fields left. And then at that time as well, the video shows that Mr. Cobb quickly finished his beer out on the sidewalk, threw that cup down on the table that he was at, did a beeline around into the parking lot, around the other people. As soon as he got around his friend, Mr. Wallace, who was then at that point approaching Mr. Fields, the victim, Mr. Fields had been walking away. You see Mr. Fields then turns, and as he turns, that's the time that Mr. Cobb comes around with a roundhouse punch and strikes him in the head. He falls down at that point, immediately to the ground, hits his head on the pavement, is unconscious immediately, and never regains consciousness again. And as I said, the pathologist said that was a devastating blow, the blow itself, in addition to the blow to the ground. Then Mr. Cobb then left the scene at that point, and we'll deal more with that in the sentencing aspect of it. But those are the basic facts of the case. We want to just let the court know that Mr. Fields was not an aggressor, apparently in any way, to cause this to happen to Mr. Cobb.
Mr. Cobb, that was a long recitation, so I'm not going to ask whether you agree with all of those facts. But do you agree with the fact that you struck the decedent in their parking lot and that the result he died?
Yes, sir.
Sweetheart?
Yes, sir.
He said yes, sir. All right, I accept your plea. I find it as plea voluntarily, knowing and intelligent, advice and counsel, when you are satisfied, I find the facts support your plea, you sign a plea of guilt. I'm going to be glad to end the victim. Was anybody want to say anything on that?
No, Your Honor, not today.
Mr. Barrett, Mr. Dess, anything you want to say?
No, sir, Your Honor, we'll defer against consent.
Mr. Cobb, anything you want to say to me today? All right. I've accepted the plea and we refer the sentence to the December term, general sessions for your county.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Your Honor.